what we've figured out is every relationship is either converging, growing together, or diverging, growing apart. And yeah, some are kind of running in parallel, but really it's always a little bit more converging or a little bit diverging. And a lot of times it's diverge, converge as you expand and contract.
Someone who has goals are designing and engineering a life so that they're literally on a path to success. And someone who is not growth oriented, someone who is fixed mindset and or has these wilding limiting beliefs holding them back, which is holding the relationship back. Conscious couples, business partners, and singles committed to attracting their dream partner. Welcome to the Conscious Couples podcast, where we share our life, love story, and combined relationship expertise to help you create and consistently cultivate the most magnificent, intimate relationship possible.
Never again will you feel hopeless and alone in your intimate relationship challenges.
Having accumulated thousands of hours coaching conscious couples and individuals all over the world, as well as starting and growing a global business together, Alan and I are here to guide you in all things relationships.
Thank you again for tuning into the one place where it's not about you or me, it's about the we. Conscious couples and individuals from all over the world, welcome back to the one and only Conscious Couples podcast. So we are doing an episode that's a little different than usual, similar to the last episode, 138. If you have not listened to that yet, this is the intimate partner, so to speak, of that episode. So please go back and listen to that if you have not yet. That's the male's perspective. This is going to be episode 139, what it's like to be an empowered, growth-minded woman in a relationship, which I can only imagine is terrible. I'm joking. I'm being playful. All right. So before we jump into this episode, I want to give a huge shout out to Next Level Podcast Solutions for producing this show and 50 others, podcasters all over the world. Mental health, personal growth, personal development, self-improvement. I'm pretty sure 90%, if not 100% of our shows are all in one of those four categories, which is wild. Fitness, that kind of thing. Before we jump into this episode, my love, I always ask ladies first, what is your intention?
My intention is for the ladies out there. No, all seriousness. My intention for this episode is to help the women in, hopefully, in a growth-oriented relationship to feel heard, valued, and celebrated. Aside from that, the secondary intention that I have is for the eyes to be opened for those who are either in a relationship with an empowered woman and to ultimately help conscious couples, conscious singles all over the world empower more women and have a really strong relationship together in that.
So for anyone out there watching or listening to this right now, if you are an empowered, growth-minded woman, now's the time to hit the share button and send it off to your counterpart.
Definitely.
It might be scary. Maybe review it first, but it'll be helpful.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to interview Emilia as she interviewed me before.
Yes.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to ask is, what is the biggest challenge you've had? Because you didn't meet me until you were 25.
Correct.
Okay. I didn't meet you till I was 67. No, I'm kidding.
Sugar daddy.
No, so I was 30 and Emilia was 25. I am significantly older than her. Anywhere between 5 and 7 years, depending on which conversation I'm in. No, but I was born in 88 and she was born in 94. So it's 6 years, really.
Yes.
And you didn't meet me until a quarter century into your life, and you started dating around 15 or so.
Younger than that.
And so you've been in many relationships with many different people.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a negative way.
No.
As have I before meeting you.
Mm-hmm.
What is the hardest thing about being so growth-oriented in a relationship?
I would say the first thing that's super duper difficult is recognizing after the fact of all wrecking your way through relationships, telling yourself that it's me, you're the problem. But you super duper, you only realize that after the fact. For example, when I had started, I think it's so fascinating to talk about this from this perspective, because as a young girl, you are so wildly conditioned at such a young age to have a boyfriend. So for example, I have memories of people asking me when I was in kindergarten, "Oh, is this your boyfriend?" And it just so happened to be one of my best friends. And so when you hear that conditioning, almost as if it's encouraging a relationship to happen, you start learning that in order to be worthy in this world, you need to have a relationship. So I officially started to quote unquote date around 13, but I like to say unofficially at a very young age, I was socially pressured into that. Anyhow, that's aside. So to answer this, really, you end up going through life as a growth oriented woman. You get into relationships, you get out of relationships. There's struggles, there's triumphs, there's moments where you feel connected with your partner or with your love interest, and then the disconnects that you experience are far greater though, and they're far more frequent, and they hurt a lot more. Reason being is because oftentimes you don't know why. So you walk around, or at least this was my experience, you walk around, you go through the relationships, and you're trying to figure it all out and trying to give people the benefit of the doubt, but yet you always feel after the relationship ends that you're kind of left empty-handed because you don't have an answer as to why did this not work out. So you are in this wild quest. For me, it was a super positive mindset that I had. So I saw every single quest of relationship as an opportunity to learn and grow, right? That's very critical, a very big cornerstone of someone with a growth mindset. I saw it as a quest to try to figure out what had I contributed into the relationship that had it fail, or that brought all these challenges that ultimately I didn't want to be with that person. And so it was an incredible learning opportunity. But one of the most painful aspects of it was that the person on the other end isn't doing that work. They're not self-reflecting, and they're not asking themselves that same exact question. And so the biggest through line is the fact that you recognize only after the fact that you are the only growth-oriented person in that relationship.
And it's not a 0 to 1, it's a 0 to 10. Mm-hmm. So how growth-oriented is your partner? Everyone should stop right now and really assess this. 0 to 10, how growth-oriented are you? 0 to 10, how growth-oriented is your partner? Mm-hmm. And just be honest with this. Who is the more growth-oriented partner? So Emilia is the first partner that I've ever been with where she has a higher future orientation than me. Yep. Meaning I told her about my goals and she said, "You never thought past 60?" And I was, oh my goodness, I have thought past 60, but I've never had anyone call me out for that, which is why I only did till 60, because that already makes me look nuts.
Well, I'm coconut.
Yeah. So. We're both coconuts together. I don't know the analogy. It was some metaphor.
We're a little coconutty.
Yeah, we're a little coconutty. So one thing that I think is really critical, and I've noticed this in my relationships as well, is every relationship that I was in, I would take a lot of ownership and self-reflect. What can I change? What can I improve? What can I do better? How can I get better? And then eventually you get older and older and older and older. And before I met you, I was 30, almost 30, 29. And I realized eventually, wait a minute, all the things that you were complaining about our relationship, I've worked on.
Yeah,
I've solved them. I've shored up the castle.
Yeah.
Why is it still not working? Turns out the better and better and better that I got physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the more self-efficacy, the more I became capable, the more self-belief, the more self-worth, the more my goals got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, the more ignited I was, and the less the relationship would work. So the Conscious Couples podcast, we started this 139 episodes ago, the Love Train, welcome. It was about growth. An intimate relationship is about growth. It was about, and this is what we've come to realize through, you and I have been coaching intimate couples for the last 3 years. And that's been super eye-opening for me. Incredible. And I know it has been for you as well, maybe less than me because I was more ignorant in this arena. But ultimately, what we've figured out is every relationship is either converging, growing together, or diverging, growing apart. And yeah, some are kind of running in parallel, but really it's always a little bit more converging or a little bit diverging. And a lot of times it's diverge, converge as you expand and contract. Right. So my question for you, my love, in hindsight, what do you wish you could tell younger Emilia to help her understand that it's not anything wrong with you, it's you are significantly different and you just don't know it yet?
Well, it bridges off of where I just left that last answer, which is I didn't understand from a very blatant standpoint, scientific standpoint, that I was the only person who had the growth mindset. That terminology didn't come to me in that form with a definition, with an understanding of what that actually means, how you interact in relationships, meaning you take all the responsibility.
And this is unconscious and subconscious. This isn't, no one goes around, I have a fixed mindset.
Right. As a matter of fact, it always came in the form of you have a positive attitude. You have a great attitude. It always came in the form of like attitude. So that's like the like socially accepted version of a quote unquote growth mindset. But truth be told, what I would share with little Emilia would be that the fact that you are hyper growth mindset, you love learning. One of your biggest core values is growth, is evolving. And if I could share that with her, it would be so huge because I would stop wasting my time with people who ultimately cannot stand growth, cannot stand evolving. Why? Because it's a giant mirror of how little they actually are picking apart life and how little they feel competent to be able to make change on their own accord. Now, I want to just be mindful of what I just said because of the fact that we all have to start somewhere. However, I do want to hold up the mirror for those empowered, growth-oriented women who have too much of what you just saw there, which is the compassionate bone.
Yeah.
The compassionate bone wants you to believe that your partner or the people that you interact with are going to get better.
And this is falling in love with potential.
This is falling in love with potential. Exactly. And what you end up doing, and this is what I had done, was fall in love with potential over and over and over again, constantly giving people the benefit of the doubt without any deadlines, without any standards, without any boundaries.
Without any action. Very little action.
Oh, yeah. So when it comes to that, if I had the understanding that I was a hyper growth minded individual, and how that would conflict in my relationships that were not also growth minded, I do know that I would have, number one, the word to describe what I'm feeling. And that alone would help me be able to traverse the emotional landscape of when I was diverging with my counterpart. I would not have this inner narrative going on of it's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault this isn't working. And that ended up degrading my self-worth tremendously, more than I ever understood. And how that impacted me and little Emilia and growing Emilia was constantly choosing people to be in my life and have the privilege to be in my life and helping them grow more than they ever wanted to grow. So I ended up pushing people way beyond what their comfort zone was. And then I would become the villain of that. And ultimately that wasn't, in hindsight, fair to me.
Yeah.
Because I kept bringing this narrative in that it was what was wrong with me. So I ultimately developed this core belief of unlovability. And if I'm unlovable, right, then like what else do I need to do in order to shape shift or mold my standards, drop my standards, mold my standards, tell myself specific stories in order to be quote unquote lovable to anyone or to the people that I am interested in.
So you gave an example of a past relationship where the partner of yours smoked cigarettes.
Yeah.
And they kept lying to you that they quit, lying to you that they quit,
the
lying
lies
to you that
that
they
I've
quit.
tolerated.
And what it comes down to is Emilia's a high value woman, and unfortunately she's not really allowed to say that without coming off super arrogant, but ultimately you are. And what a high value woman is someone who has high self-belief, high standards, high growth orientation, high goals, high desire to improve and build and to have a bigger, better, brighter future.
High acumen, high skill sets,
yes,
high
exactly.
education.
I know, honey. Yep. Right, so,
la,
yeah,
la, la.
Yeah, and there's 1,000 more.
Yeah.
Completely, to be completely honest. No, my point with this is I try to relate this to things that people already understand. So, for example, I have an iPhone 14.
Mm-hmm.
And the first iPhone came out in 2007 when I was a senior in high school back during the Stone Age. I'm kidding. I was a senior in high school in 2007. Steve Jobs and Apple came out with the very first iPhone. Yeah. It was a touchscreen. Back then, BlackBerries were popular with the non-touchscreen keyboards and all that kind of stuff. You were probably 6. I'm kidding. I'm obviously joking. No, but ultimately, the very first iPhone was a revolutionary breakthrough back then if you compared that to my iPhone now, the iPhone 14, so there's been 13 iterations, improvements, growth orientation of the iPhone since then, it would be hot garbage in comparison.
Right.
And so I really, really, really like the analogy of I'm going to be 36 in November. I'm going to be Alan version 3.6. And I'm going to say this forever because it's so important. Alan version 3.6 can be with Emilia version 3.0. You're going to be 30 this year. I'm going to be 36 this year. That works. What I need to make clear to everyone out there watching, especially the amazing women out there who are growth-oriented, is that Alan 3.0 never could have been with Emilia 3.0. I wasn't ready yet. I didn't have the operating system. I didn't have the software upgrades. I didn't have the beliefs. I didn't have the habits. I didn't have the discipline. I am a peer with you. But you at 36 is going to be far more than me at 36, especially because you have me in your life, an older version. I really want that to land because a lot of our listeners out there are with partners who the 2.8 version or the 2.9 version or the 3.7 version is just not a peer anymore. It feels like you are your partner's mother. It feels like they just aren't leveling up as quickly as you are. And it's very, very important to understand that what was once aligned in an intimate relationship is no longer aligned because one of you has a higher growth orientation. More belief leads to more action leads to more learning leads to more growth learning. And I had an ex-girlfriend, I will never not say this. She said, dating you is like dating a Stairmaster. What she was trying to say, as playful as that was, is I can't keep up with you. And you had a partner in the past who said the same thing. And you and I deluded ourselves to thinking they could. And I used to say, well, if you keep believing you can't keep up with me, then you won't keep up with me. In hindsight, the truth is you don't want to keep up with me. You don't have the capabilities to keep up with me. And that's okay. That's not your orientation. And that's very scary to say for you and me. But my next question for you is, in hindsight, how obvious is it? Is it obvious that those relationships never could have worked long term?
Short answer is it's wildly obvious, but everything that's the hindsight bias at play. Hindsight is 20/20. That's why we say that. I like to articulate it to the women that I coach and that are in a space where they are struggling right now. Maybe they're in a relationship that their partner wants the credit and the merit to feel and be a peer, but yet has not merited or earned the peer status in the relationship, if you will. And kind of right now we're talking about power dynamics. So what I think is fascinating is if you were to imagine you are going to a road trip, you want to go on this road trip. It's very opening for you. Now, being with someone who is holding back an empowered, growth-oriented woman is like, I haven't ever been in this, so I don't know it 100%, but I've heard people talk about it, which is like sitting in traffic in LA for hours on end. You're trying to get to your destination, but yet the person driving, you've given the steering wheel to your partner who literally only knows how to get there via this highway.
Hi, Amy and Chris Lennius here to give a quick moment of appreciation for Alan and Emilia. We have been working with them for a few months now, maybe 6, maybe going on 6 months now, and we appreciate you guys so much. To see you guys work as a team, to help couples work as a team is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. Not only have you helped us reconnect and helped us with our marriage, you've also helped us through big life moments, with boundaries, with creating our own stable unit at home. We appreciate you guys so, so much.
Yes, truly heartfelt appreciate you guys and everything you've done for us.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
We love you.
What empowered women need to understand, and it's very obvious to see in hindsight, especially if they're growth oriented.
You need to take the wheel.
You need to take the wheel, tell that person to get in the shotgun. And that's where a lot of empowered, growth oriented women actually don't do that because of the low self-worth element.
And lack of courage.
Yes, that's why it's so, so helpful. So in hindsight, it's very obvious the lack of courage to be able to take that. And again, here's what's interesting. When you're a growth-oriented human, you're always being the student because you want to learn more. So that actually deactivates your courageousness because the question becomes, well, what if I don't get that lesson? So you sitting stuck in traffic is the analogy or the metaphor to you feeling stuck to want to grow and want to level up, become more powered, empower your partner, but yet they feel as though they need to have the wheel. They're the ones that feel as though this is the best way to go and they know better. And you're just sitting there in the shotgun seat like, actually, there's an exit over to the right and we can take that right now and we can go off into, a road that is completely free of traffic. Why don't we just go there? That's what it's like to be in a past relationship. And that's what it's like to be in more of a lack of growth-oriented relationship. So in hindsight, it is 2020. But yet, so many women gaslight themselves because of the inner narrative. So few women have empowered and growth-oriented women to look up to tell them, honestly, in your intuition, listen to that. There's so many social narratives that tell you to disconnect from that intuition, to disconnect from what other people are saying and just listen to you. For example, I have someone in mind right now who finally listened to her intuition, finally had the courage after years of being in a relationship that was not aligned, that disempowered her, that turned her into a horrible human being. Her words, not mine. And finally had the courage to actually say, I'm not willing to tolerate this anymore. So in hindsight, the standards that were dropped, the belief in potential that was never actually going to be actualized on its own accord without my injection of being a growth-oriented human, helping that person level up. That is the toil of the experiences, not only that I have had a plethora of, but many women experience and share with me. So the last thing that I want to comment on is one of the biggest things that I hear from women, empowered women, growth-oriented women, and I also experienced this on the topic of potential, falling in love with potential. People will talk a big freaking talk, and that's what allows us to slip into this delusion of people in a relationship actually wanting to give. You can be wanting to give someone everything in the world. I had a conversation this morning. Love isn't enough. And I truly believe that, because you can want to love your partner a 10 out of 10. Are you actually willing to go through the discomfort of looking at your own insecurities, your own fears, your own social conditioning, and your own trauma to work through the things that are literally holding you back, called limiting beliefs? For a lot of people, the walk does not match the talk. And the reason is because they're actually not willing to go through that discomfort. And that's the belief that they're going to do otherwise is what holds a lot of empowered, growth-oriented women back.
What I've seen dozens of times, I want to say hundreds, but dozens of times, is there's usually one partner who lacks humility, inward humility. Mm-hmm. Outward, they seem very humble, but inwardly, they're not asking questions. They don't have a notebook out. They're not learning a ton. They're not growing. They're not getting coaching and therapy. They're not doing the work.
Yeah.
The work. We did an episode about that. And there's another partner who is enabling that unconsciously by being a coward.
By believing in potential.
Yes.
Instead of saying, honestly, here are your words, here are your actions. There's a wild gap.
Babe, the truth of the matter is I was such a coward in my past.
Same.
That I didn't share the whole truth. Even right before this episode, everyone, I want to bring you behind the scenes. I would let Emilia drive in the podcast production, even though I know that I'm far more aware and far more capable because I've been doing this far longer.
Yeah.
Because I'm uncomfortable in the leadership role, I would rather be a student and let her drive, and vice versa. That's why we work so well, because we both started out as cowards and now we're both empowered. But ultimately, I remember at the beginning of this podcast, I remember being like, sweetheart, can you give me the marker? Like, do you think that you know better than me about podcasting? What I realize now is you were taking the leadership role because I wasn't.
Yes.
I wasn't in an empowered energy. And if I'm not stepping up, you're going to have to.
That's what an empowered woman will do. Empowered growth women will take the wheel and take charge.
And then give the credit away.
Unless there's an ego, arrogant, and entitled person that they're in a partnership with, in which case they'll be like, wait, okay, here's the marker.
And then they'll be pissed when it goes horribly astray, because really So here's the lesson. You cannot let the less competent, less aware leader drive the car. They're going to drive you off a cliff repeatedly, and then you're going to blame yourself or you're going to resent them.
Or tolerate just sitting in LA traffic.
While your dreams slowly crumble.
Exactly.
And this is the irony too, and this is a paradox. When you have the courage to say, listen, this is below my standard, this relationship is below my standard, believe it or not, a lot of the partners are going to rally and they're going to actually step up. And so I used to say, actions don't lie, words do. I actually have a new saying, words lie, actions lie, What doesn't lie is what you catch someone doing behind the scenes when they think no one's watching. That's who someone really is. Everyone out there, big mirror, I want you to imagine your partner when no one's watching. What are they like?
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing? What are they thinking about? Do they have big goals and dreams? Are they getting after it?
Mm-hmm.
That is the truth. You have to look at the naked, candid truth if you want to grow and transform. Okay, so I know we got to jump here soon, but a couple more questions real quick.
Yep.
We'll keep it to one. One more question. If I could only ask you one more question, what would it be? How does someone know whether or not they are the more, and I want tangibles, how does someone know whether or not they are, every relationship, there's one partner holding it back.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a more growth-oriented person, and it depends on the arena. So in fitness, I'm ahead of Emilia for sure. In podcasting, no question. Business for sure. But she's way ahead with the home. She's way ahead with, certain things. The pets, our future family, inner work, therapy. Okay, so how does someone know who is holding the relationship back? Because in theory, there's always a bottleneck.
There's always a bottleneck. What I have experienced and what a lot of our clients have shared with us is very similar. It comes down to the feeling of pulling your partner up a hill, right? You always feel like you're anchored, right? And you said tangibles, so I'm bringing those up. So when you want to go and do something, I think someone who's growth oriented and who's empowered, what has been a cornerstone of that is that you have a longer time perspective. You think out into the future more. Why? Is because if you have high self-belief, high self-efficacy, you are likely to be able to paint and imagine the future. You have more skill set at doing that, right? So naturally that is the cornerstone. So you could literally look at that tangible. Who's the person that is planning and is trying to put and plant more seeds into your future? That could be events. That could be, the person with the calendar, the person with the one who is actually trying to share their goals with you. That's the person that's growth oriented.
It is the person with bigger goals.
Absolutely.
Not fake goals, not talk goals, but the person building toward goals, because higher self-belief creates higher goals. Higher goals creates higher standards.
Exactly.
Higher standards creates higher growth. And I don't think that you can. Why would someone with level 10 self-belief have level 2 goals? It means it's fake and it's not real. And I think that the sign of someone's true self-belief is usually in their goals.
It's in their goals and what that reflects down into their systems and processes of how they live their life. So for example, I mentioned a calendar, right? And then also on the day-to-day, their habits, right? So if you have someone who is empowered and growth-oriented, their standards, i.e. what they're doing in their day-to-day, is far more connected to building a future than it is tearing it down in your habits, right? So that's why someone who is more growth-minded or an empowered female might look at, let's just say, an area of their health, right? Like for me in the past, it was, why would you ever smoke a cigarette if you full well know that it literally kills you? Like there's science on science on science on science, indisputably. Why would you ever do that?
Because they don't value their life.
Exactly.
And because there's short-term pleasure over long-term health.
Exactly.
And that's the reality.
And they're trying to cope with how their limiting beliefs and the emotions that they have surrounding them from their own experiences and trauma, etc., is having them feel like they're drowning. And so that's one tiny example of how a habit connects to the systems and processes of what designs the life someone's living, which then connects to their goals, which then also connects to their standards, which also connects to this bigger growth-oriented, empowered person. That you can see it in the day-to-day. You can see it when you zoom out bird's eye view.
The signs are there, but we don't want to look at them.
We actually actively have cognitive distortions, one of them being the halo effect we've seen come up in our clients all the time. We have this oftentimes when we're trying to take off
You
this
said I'm always
distortion.
deleting files.
Yes. You want to, right? You go to a family party and you have these like weird interactions with certain people and your partner's kind of a dick for lack of better words, I have so many files of this, of one of my past partners, like would get drunk and would say these wildly racist things, like be such an absolute jerk. And then I walk away, and as time slowly goes by, I would delete those files.
Yeah.
I would only remember the good things that happened, aka the like 1 or 2 good things that happened, and blow them up. It's called magnification. I would blow them up. And so over time, I would just see my partner as this wonderful human. And then that's when you start talking to certain people who have also seen it. It's like, M?
And then
like,
you have your friends coming to you
that?
going, M.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You've deleted some files. Like, why is my picture of this person different? And a lot of people don't have the humility to kind of examine that. So long story short, that daily habits, the systems and processes that run their life, because our goals, when we are growth oriented and when we are empowered, our goals, right? Like, it's not like they run us. It's a collaborative effort. Someone who has goals are designing and engineering a life so that they're literally on a path to success. And someone who is not growth oriented, someone who is fixed mindset and or has these wilding limiting beliefs holding them back, which is holding the relationship back, does not.
You have to look at your partner objectively, and it's almost like you have to temporarily take off the rose-colored glasses, because you know them and you know their potential and you love them and you care about them and you see
them win.
You want to see them succeed, you want to see them flourish, and you have to take off the rose-colored glasses and be a scientist for a minute and really examine, okay, who is this person when no one's watching? What are the behaviors they're doing? What are their habits? Am I seeing actual improvement? Am I catching them reading a personal development book?
Am I leaving the house and then coming back and the things are just getting better on their own accord? Or are they
There
actively
you go.
decaying?
Are they actively decaying? That's very, very powerful. Okay. Anything you want to add before we go?
I love this conversation and I really appreciate the questions. And also, yes, the last thing that I'll add, this is actually something that's been seared in my mind, and I'm really freaking grateful for this. This was something that my father had passed down to me, my mother had passed down to me from their peers and mentors who helped them really see things very objectively, even if you want to see someone better. Never settle for less was the statement. And what that meant to me and how that helped me as an empowered, growth-oriented human was really help what you just said, actually look at things objectively. Because if you have that mantra, never settle for less, then you can look at if you continue this relationship and it is less than your standard, you are not just buying into that less than standard, but you're also buying into the family, the kids that you have or that you will go out and engage with. Your interactions will be less. Everything in your life will be less because that person, we're not talking about necessarily extrinsic value or intrinsic value. It really comes down to these standards. If your partner has lower standards, your life will become less as a result. If your partner has lower standards and a growth mindset, you can give them feedback and you can level up, but never accept less. And that was a really big thing that helped me, even though I was not perfect. And I, like I said, tornado through my relationships to try to figure it out. That was one of my North Stars, was never settle for less.
Same. I remember before I left my last partner prior to you, I said, I can't settle, because someone sat me down and said, why would you ever leave? You guys are great together.
Right.
And I said, compared to you and your partner, we're magnificent together, because whoa.
Yeah.
However, I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I know the choice. It's dreams or be with this person, and I have to choose my dreams. I can't settle.
Yeah.
And that was the best decision. The best decision I ever made was going to WPI. The second best decision I ever made was leaving that person. The best decision I ever made was DMing you. Hands down. So if you're out there right now, remember, someone might be here for a chapter that is aligned.
Yeah.
And then you're overcooking the turkey because you've outgrown them, and it's time to at least have that hard conversation.
Great
okay.
point.
So we appreciate you all. Thank you so much. We have Relationship Talks coaching. So if you're on the struggle bus and you're in the dark and you feel alone in this, please reach out to Emilia or I. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook. You can click the link in the show notes to register a 30-minute free breakthrough session with us. Relationship Talks coaching. We really, really, really love meeting our listeners. Please, please, please do. And by the way, now, if you're listening on Spotify, apparently you can comment live on Spotify. Yeah, so I got to talk to you about how we're going to do that. It's very exciting. So if you're on Spotify, for the Spotify listeners out there, leave us a comment and that kind of thing. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Relationship Talks
also event. We have our monthly Relationship Talks event. It is how to be your true self in your relationship. This is something, obviously, if you always have that rose-colored glasses on, you're going to struggle to look objectively, not only at your partner, but also yourself. So we have a lot of couples that lose themselves when they get into a relationship, and then they're like trying to figure out who they are or get back to who they are while in a relationship. And more often than not, a lot of people struggle in that. So this Relationship Talks event is going to be all about coming back to not only who you are, but integrating
your
who
standards.
You've become.
Yeah,
integrating who you've become as a result of this wonderful relationship, right? So integrating standards, etc. So that will actually be the day, and the day is going to be different than our normal. So it's not going to be on Thursday. It's going to be on Tuesday, October 15th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we cannot wait to see you and the rest of the Conscious Couples and Conscious Singles community. We hope to see you there.
The link to register will be in the show notes. When you register, it'll email you and you can add it to your Google Calendar or whatever calendar you use, Outlook, Apple. I'm a Google man myself. So yeah, Google is the way. We are not getting paid for that, I promise. Thank you all so much for listening. We appreciate you. And as always, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.
The we. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Conscious Couples podcast. We love connecting with the Conscious Couples community, so please make sure you follow us on Instagram. I am at Evolve with Emilia, and Alan is a Lazaros 88.
Also, if you or your partner resonated with this episode, leave us a review at the link in the show notes, and please share this with someone you love and care about.
Until next time, remember, it's not about you or me. It's about
the we.